Minasan konnichiwa, and welcome to the Board Game Dojo's Import or Not series, where we take a look at games from Asia and let you know if they're worth your hard-earned money to import or not. Today we are taking a look at the latest offering from a publisher that we at the Board Game Dojo really like, Itten, and their game Nuts-a-Gogo, a game in which you're trying to put a lot of different shaped wooden pieces into a cup that's like this big. It's kind of the size of a free sample box, and you need to put one hand behind your back, and then you need to put actually, I'm just going nuts trying to explain this to you. Let me just show you. This is Nuts-a-Gogo, today's import or not. This is the play area for Nuts-a-Gogo. As you can see, these nuts come in different shapes and sizes. Only the type of nut, which is the shape of the nut, matters, not the size of the nut. You will also have Antonio, which is this nice peanut dude here in the middle. Now, there are 5 different game modes to play in this game, but I'm only going to introduce to you the basic mode because every one of the modes is based off of that basic mode. You'll start the game by handing everybody a cup, which is about the size of a water cup at the dentist office or a free sample cup at your local Costco. You'll put it in front of each player, and you'll count down 3, 2, 1, go. Each player can grab as many nuts as they want from the middle. They can grab a heap full, they can grab 1 or 2, it doesn't really matter. They can only do this one-handed. Once they are happy with their cup, which let's say we want a little bit of heaping fill, heaping is okay. Once one person says, you know what, I'm actually done, I don't want to grab any more nuts, they will grab Antonio, and this starts the 10-second timer. They will count down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And in that time, everybody else needs to decide when they are going to stop. And they have to stop at some point during that countdown timer. Once they have decided to stop, they will clap that they are no longer going to take any more nuts. The last player who claps actually has to give away 1 nut to the player who grabbed Antonio. You will then start the second half of the game, which is when you eat the nuts. In the basic mode, you'll dump out all of the nuts that you grabbed during your time. And then, going clockwise, you will then announce one of these types of nuts. So let's say for us, we want this tiny little guy right here. We will show it to the table, and each player who has one needs to also discard one of the same type. Now again, size doesn't matter, just the type of nut that it is, and they'll put it back in the box. If at any point a nut is announced and you don't have that nut in your collection, you are out. You are eliminated, and you have to put all of your nuts back into the box. This basic mode is a last person standing, so you'll keep going around in a circle until there's only 1 player left. And that's how to play the basic mode of Nuts-a-Gogo. Itten is one of the hardest board game publishers to have to review for. And although we tried it early on, I think it was like our 3rd video that we ever did on the Board Game Dojo with their Fun Brick series, there's kind of a couple different ways in which you have to look at their game. Yes, they have mainstream titles like Tokyo Highway and Crash Octopus, both of which we've talked about before on the channel, whether it be on podcasts or different videos. But they also have games in which you're trying to balance different household objects on one or the other side of a pirate ship looking thing, and then trying not to have the teeter-totter flip over to the other side. Or they have another game in which you tie a ball to a string to the ceiling, and then you set up Stonehenge on your table, and then use the ball as a little wrecking ball trying to knock over things. So they have games in which you need to look at traditional mechanics and taking a look at those things, but they also have games that should more be looked at in terms of how much of a good experience do they give you. And Nuts-a-Gogo definitely lies in the latter of those categories. We need to take a look at it not in the mechanics, because it really doesn't have that many, but more in terms of how does it feel to actually play it. So let's start off with just the components and the rulebook itself. The components, although really nice and have a nice sheen to them, we did get 1 or 2 broken pieces of it, but I think that just kind of happens when you have a collection of over 50 different wooden pieces that are going to be in the box. Everything else is a nice sturdy production. And the rulebook is quite nice. It is literally 5 pages long, and each one of those 5 pages have a different rule set for you to use the components that are in the box for. Although they're not wildly different from another, it does give you 5 different ways to use the same number of components. And that does tend to lend itself to planting this game with the audience that it is supposed to be. I've heard Tom Brewster on the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast talk about that this feels more like a convention-only game. And I do agree that it would be quite good at conventions. In fact, that was the reason I actually bought the game at the Essen booth, is because not only was I anticipating it, but I watched people having fun with it at the booth itself, a good convention game. But it also seems like a good game that would play very well with families, especially those with kids, and those looking to just kind of turn their brain off for a little while and just have some silly fun. And that silliness actually leads me to my next point, which is that when you are playing this game, you really need to be in the right headspace for it. This game is on a scale of light to heavy, extremely light on what you are going to be doing. Most of the time, you can think about the strategy that might work, right? Like maybe this game I'm going to try to go to diversify the amount of nuts that I grab from the box. Or this time I'm going to try to specialize from a certain kind of nut that is harder to get, like the cone-shaped nuts in the box. But really, once the game actually starts and you're so madly trying to rush for just as many nuts as you can get to put in your cup, because the people who have the larger amounts of nuts in the cup are just to a greater advantage. All of that thinking about the strategy and stuff, it just goes out the window. It's just a mad rush just trying to fill as many nuts into your cup as possible, trying to maybe, once that countdown timer starts, try to at least fill in some of the gaps that you might have had there. So really what we're taking a look at is a game in which you need to just turn your mind off a little bit and play. And that's going to be really good for some people, and for others, it's just not going to match the rest of their collection. Another thing that is worth mentioning is that with the convention games and it being a light family game is that on the box it says that it plays 2 to 6 players. It does not. 2 and 3 player games of this are awful. It is a 4, 5, or 6 player game, which does actually make sense then why it would be a better convention game or a better family game instead of 2 or 3. We actually just found that in a 2 or 3 player game, we actually spend more time setting up and then actually grabbing the nuts than we actually did with the part of the game in which you are supposed to be kind of feeling the suspense. What nut should I grab that I think I can eliminate everybody else for? Because usually you only got 1 or 2 turns. I'm not really sure if this is because of the smaller player size, but it just was especially noticeable in the smaller player counts. At the end of the day, I don't think there's a whole lot here, and so I'm not going to take a whole lot of your time. I think this actually boils down to just being a very good kids game or a very good family game, as long as you have kids that don't mind just being eliminated, because the next round will quickly start again. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to probably fall somewhere around a 5.5 or a 6 out of 10 if we had to give it a ranking. More in line with a game that's like Stick Collection, which actually shares a different similarity. You see, Stick Collection as part of the Funbrick series was actually them re-implementing an older game that they thought would work very well in the new Funbrick series game. And nuts-a-gogo is in fact another re-implementation of a game that was either, depending on where you find it, called Mada Haire or Mada Hairu, which could mean not yet, I'm putting things in, or not yet, you can still put things in. And in both cases, it's interesting to see what Itten kind of puts to the forefront of what they're looking for games that they think are going to do well. Stick Collection has hit for some people, but for a lot of other people, it was just kind of light and a little bit finicky. And I think nuts-a-gogo is going to be in that same realm. That for some people, I think especially if they have kids, this game could hit for them. And it's just going to be an interesting, new, unique game that they can pull off their shelf. But for some, and I think that this is especially true of those who try it at 2 or 3 players, they're going to find that it's just kind of lacking a certain grappling factor, something that's going to bring them coming back to this night after night or time after time, or trying to do something in which they can introduce it to their hobbyist friends. And that leads us to our ultimate conclusion, which is it worth the import for you or not? And I think where we actually fall down on this is in a different kind of discussion altogether, which is the time of year that it is. We are at the time of the year where you need to start thinking about Secret Santa, you need to start thinking about gifts, and I think that's where Itten kind of shines, especially a game like Nuts-a-Gogo. That maybe if you were taking a look at it and you saw the price point, which is usually about 30 euros or 32 to 35 US dollars, and then you have to add the import fee on top of that, which at that price point is kind of a risk because for some people it might hit, especially those with families, but for others it might be worth at most a night or two of fun. So what I actually think you should think about this is as a nice gift option. That is something that Itten has really done well with, is providing you different experiences for somebody that already has tons of experiences that they already have on their board game shelf. Nuts-a-gogo is unlike anything that I've played before. And because of that, I think that if you are looking for a gift option for somebody that already has so many different options on their game shelf, this might be something to actually take a look for, and also other things by Itten like Stonehenge and the Sun that I mentioned earlier. Taking a look, reading about it, seeing, okay, is this going to be worth maybe a night or two of fun for them and their game group? Maybe it's not something that I would buy for me, but it's something that I would absolutely enjoy getting from somebody else because it's like, oh, I don't know, that price point is a little risky that maybe I would never buy it, but I would definitely buy it for somebody else. And especially if it's for somebody who, as I said before, has a family, has small kids, in which the sturdy box, the nice components, and the very easy to learn rulebook that has a bunch of little tweaks on the same rule set so that they can do something a little bit different each time they play, then I think that that is where I would recommend this game. So is it worth the import or not for you yourself? Probably not. It's hard to recommend it at that. But if you're looking for a gift for somebody that already has so much already in their collection that they might want a unique new experience, then I think nuts-a-gogo is worth a look. Thank you so much for watching. Arigatou gozaimashita. Until next time, じゃあね.